Welcome to Write Your Book Your Way, the interview series that goes behind the scenes of real self-published books to explode the myth that there's a right way to write your book and to give you the freedom to write in a way that feels good to you and gets it finished. I'm Kris Emery, owner and lead editor at Kris Emery Editorial, and I'll be interviewing my past clients, all first-time non-fiction writers and entrepreneurs, to show you how it can be done, or could be done. Today I'm talking with Rajni Raman, who I worked with as editor on her book, Two Suitcases, $200 and a Dream. After 20 years of working in the information technology industry as a software engineer, Rajni turned her lifelong passion for holistic modalities into her mission to bring healing and wellness to women. She is the founder of Mind Body Holistic Healing and Wellness, a motivational speaker, and the Texas ambassador for an international women's empower organization, BIG. In addition, she has been a Buddhist practitioner with SGI for over 30 years. She says she cherishes the opportunity as a leader in faith to guide, inspire, and nurture hundreds of young women and share her faith breakthroughs to encourage countless members of her faith family on 3 continents. Let's dive in to her experience of writing a book. Hi everyone, today we're here with Rajni Raman and I worked on her book Undefeated Woman really recently actually. It's not even out yet, but it's in the process of being put out. So I'd love to welcome Rajni. Hi there, Rajni.
Hi, Kris. Thank you. It's good to be with you.
It's so good to have you and to talk about your memoir. So the first thing I'm going to do is just hand it over to you and get you to describe how the book fits into your business. So what the book is and what the business is and how they merge together.
So, Kris, 2 years ago, I founded my company, Wellness with Rajni, and it's a mind-body holistic healing and wellness company. And I'd myself gone through the journey of, pursuing conventional medication when I was a young mom with 2 little kids and multiple diagnoses, multiple medications, and like there was no end in sight. And at one point, I decided to pursue holistic healing modalities. It had been a part of me growing up, and my ancestors had practiced an ancient Indian healing science. So I started pursuing yoga, meditation, and healing modalities. And as healing came, one after another, these symptoms of mine started disappearing. My blood work was in perfect range. And everyone in my friend circle, who I'd been like a faith mentor as part of my faith community as a Buddhist, whenever I would share these little healing journey, or experiences of mine, I get feedback. Rajni, you must share your story. There are others who should hear this. And so, it only ignited that desire in me. It was on my bucket list for 15 years to write my book. And so 2 years ago, I finally decided this is the time to do it. I launched my company and I started the book writing process.
Okay, so the book fits in because it tells your journey with the modalities that you now use in your business.
Correct. That's exactly right.
Okay, lovely. So you've kind of touched on what got you started, but was there a moment when you, and I think you actually tell this story in the book, so I'll let you tell everyone else, was there a moment where you were just like, okay, this is actually happening now?
Yeah. So, Kris, like that, you heard the expression, right? You get sick and tired of being sick and tired. So, it had been something that I'd wanted to do. And so many times I'd started and walked away.
Okay.
And, one
Had
of the
written words.
Yes, started typing up a document, literally, or writing notes in my notebook, or putting I'm going to do this, right? I'm going to finish writing or start writing, right? So I had made these attempts physically in notepads, in like gold sheets, like little, like little notes for myself. I'm going to accomplish this by the end of the year. So in it was writing the book.
Mm.
And every time I'd start, it's this thing about, I've been an analytical person for 20 years, writing computer programs, so logic based and backed up by evidence and had been tested. So there was this part of me that, has this logical, rational brain that needs evidence and that needs proof and that needs, right, a scientific approach. And here I'm getting ready to share my vulnerabilities and my story and my struggles. And so also, a part of that is talking about my faith, and that becomes sort of like this science and faith coexist together, and I've not seen that harmoniously happen. And so that was like this thing stopping me. And then I got to this place where I'm like, I've got to share my story exactly the way it is, and we go from there, right? If it touches one person, like my goal is accomplished. So one of my very dear friends, um at the age of 35, like out of the blue, with no medical history, just had a very bad headache. Like it felt horrible, like she needed to lay down. So she called her husband, let the her daughter was home, so daughter dialed dad came home, and like, this doesn't look good. So she was rushed to the emergency room to get a bunch of tests done. Long story short, she'd had internal bleeding, like an aneurysm.
Yeah.
And so she had to go through a 12-hour surgery where they cut open the brain to control the bleeding. And when she came home, she had to quit her job and like be told, like, you're going to be on a regimen of medications like blood thinners. And the next 2 years, she had multiple tests to, prevent further aneurysms. And so she's a dear friend. And so, she comes to mind that, she's an immigrant living in the United States. And, so to say, in a very modern setting, a modern country with access to all sorts of medical procedures and, facilities, right?
Mm.
But, her struggle touched my heart. And I could relate to it so closely that if my journey inspires her, then the purpose and the mission of sharing the story is accomplished. If
Yeah.
she walks away feeling, yes, there is hope for me to recover beyond the diagnosis. I am not my diagnosis.
Yes, okay. And so was that a turning point for you to get serious about writing, or did that start to make it really concrete, or were you already writing by then, or did you have these notes?
I had several notes. I had started writing, and
Okay.
her going through that experience was one more
Kind
affirmation
of
that this
propelled it.
story
Yeah.
needs to be told.
Yeah. Okay. Just a little wink.
Yeah.
Oh well, quite a big, quite a big event to happen there for
Yeah.
you to think, this really needs to happen. Okay. So, what did the process look like when you were writing? So, after the bit where it was stop start and you had these notes, but you were actually like quite serious about it and getting it down, what did your writing flow look like? Did you write every day? Did you write on weekends? How long did it take overall to get that manuscript to a point where you handed it over to me?
So I had my mom routine going as a family, as a family, as a mom in the home. I had the job of getting up my kids to school, drop off, pick up lunches. And so I made a commitment to write every day, no matter what. So there would be like a quiet time where I would, make this block for an hour or say 2 hours to just write. And I didn't think about chapters or anything, but I just first like just started writing. And that process maybe took 6 months to like get to where I started, cleaning up some of my work and started chopping it up. And it didn't matter like how many pages, but sort of like in units,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So I started
Chapters in
that
the
work.
real sense of the word, like a life chapter.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started that, and it was probably there when I was 80% ish done when I met you.
Okay. Yeah. And did writing every day look like grabbing 10 minutes to write a few sentences, or did you have some serious like sessions where you had a few hours to spare? Because bearing in mind it wasn't only parenting that you had. You were starting a new business, so I
Yeah.
imagine there was
Yeah.
quite a lot to do
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah. So, many times, Chris, it was juggling stuff, right? But sometimes, like, once I would get in, then 2 hours would go by and it would feel like 10 minutes. And I'd look at the clock and be like, whoa, I've been sitting and writing for 2 hours.
That's when you
Like,
know you're doing the
yeah,
work, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Ooh. So, what was that moment when you were like, okay, I think I'm done. I think this is ready to go and have someone else look at it? How did you know that it was not in a good enough shape or anything like that, but just, I can't kind of look at this anymore. I need some perspective.
I think somewhere along, getting to that place where I felt like I've shared my perspective and I need someone to look at it like a neutral person who doesn't know me, but who knows about books, who knows about editing, who knows about reading a story and giving feedback. So I'd started looking for someone while I was feeling like I'm getting close to completion.
Yeah.
And, I shared the story to so many people that I'd gotten on a money mindset talk with a coach from the UK. Up until then, I had spoken to many in my friend circle, if someone knew an editor who worked with this genre, right? A memoir.
Hmm.
And I'd not gotten, good leads or anything. So I started this, I believe I'm a firm believer in affirmations and intentions. So I'd started doing this intention, right? That I want to get out of my way. My editor is a living, breathing person, so I just sort of do this affirmation that the universe will connect me to the person who's supposed to work with me. So I was on this call that I was not going to or didn't have time to attend, but I ended up joining for like 30 minutes. And she's from UK. I have no other common friends between me and her. Um, so I really loved everything she shared. She really resonated with me. She's an NLP certified coach. And so I booked an appointment with her and I did a master class with her. And then just in talking, I asked if she knows someone who's an editor. And she said she doesn't, but she knew someone who's written a book. And through her, I got your contact. And when we spoke, I think in the first 5 minutes, it felt like, yes, this is the person who's going to be editing my book.
Yeah, I remember that conversation and how you just felt really sure and like something was meant to be. I guess putting those feelers out and not really getting any bites for so long, and then having a good connection was a great moment to like move the book forward. In the actual writing, um, how did you know you were coming to a point where the writing felt like it needed something? Were you clear that it was coming to an end because you just said everything that you had to say, or was there still some ambiguity there?
I think I got that feeling that I'd finished sharing everything that I
Mm,
had to say. And, I was ready to hand it to someone to,
yeah.
take it further, like read and get their perspective
Yeah.
on what this story feels like.
Yes. Okay. So, during the editing process, what did that feel like? Were you very comfortable with being edited? Because I don't think you'd been edited before, is that right?
I mean, my only experience that comes close to this is in graduate school, Chris. I was
Mm.
supposed to do a thesis, a master's thesis, a 90-page thesis. And it was such a struggle because it's open ended. And I had switched from computers to liberal arts, and I was doing a master's in teaching English.
Yeah.
First school experience in the United States. and a complete contrast from what I had done in my undergraduate, right? Hard science to like liberal arts. And so
similar again then, really, that switch from the
yes,
analytical to
yeah,
the arts, to the kind of emotional
yeah.
realm that you're talking about.
So I really struggled during my thesis first to pick a topic. And then once it was done with my readers, I really struggle with their feedback, and, I like struggle to write. This time, the writing part was okay, meaning like I'd finished doing most of the writing, and when I turned it into you and I got the feedback, I looked at the first few pages and I'm like, oh yeah, I can answer this. I know what she's asking. And I think I even replied, oh, I'll get back to you by the end of the week or next week or something.
Yes.
And then,
It was just before Christmas, I think.
yes,
And so you were like, I'm going to finish this by the end of the year.
yeah, yeah. And then when I really opened it and read, like the first few, like, not just the first few pages, but like read more into it. At that time, it was maybe like 120 pages. I mean, it was more than 100 places where there was markups, questions, right? That was intimidating. I'm like, oh my God, this is just not good. And then there was this block. I can't write. Like, I really can't write. And so I remember booking a call with you to like, talk to you and say, Kris, I don't think what I've written is good enough. But our talk was, Rajni, this is just like a reader's perspective or another dimension to what you're sharing. And so that helped me tremendously. So like every time I've been able to speak with you, it's helped me move forward and like, feel like, oh yeah, she's on my team and she's just helping me share the story in a way that the reader can get what I'm trying to say, because I know everything that's, transpired, but to a reader, there may be gaps. And so I sort of, kept saying, she's helping me fill in the gaps. She's helping me give, like texture to the story. Like, how the onions, the layers of the onions. So Kris is helping me do that. And that from there it became easy. And I sort of laughed. Yeah, Kris must be thinking, yeah, a week, sure, because it took me 2 months to get back with you. Because
I was impressed by the week, don't get me wrong, but then it didn't surprise me too much that it would take a bit longer. Some people, are very thick-skinned and smash through the feedback, very detached from it. But I tend to find with memoir, it's very different. And in fact, you wrote your memoir in the third person, as though it was not a fictional story, but happening to someone else, to have that kind of distance from the actual things that happened, because obviously a lot comes up when we write. And when it is a personal story, I do tend to find that distance is helpful, and that the feedback can at first seem very personal. So it was really great that we, reconnected and reframed that for you. But I think that's a very common way to feel when people first see their editing feedback, that it's so personal, because your book's so personal. But it's really about, like, it's actually great because we've got very different perspectives and different backgrounds. We can meet with the book, but I don't have the assumed knowledge that you do. So I'm asking probably the questions that maybe some readers might ask who also don't have that assumed knowledge. So
right. Right. And I think, what helped me is I did went to your website, and there's like a workshop on your website. That's like a step-by-step writing thing.
Yes. The email.
Yeah, the email course. So I took that. It helped me a little bit. And then, many of your suggestions, I just copy paste them in a document and I'd reread them. And so some of the things that I really learned from you is, when I'm writing, use my different senses. Also, if I'm referring to a place, say for example, I have reference to Mount Fuji in Japan. For someone, it may be like, oh yeah, I know Mount Fuji, Japan. But for someone who's maybe, traveled maybe just in a country, they're like, so what is Mount Fuji, Japan? Or what is the reference? And so giving that detail, so the person has, reference, or if I'm quoting someone that's inspired me, just by mentioning a name and who they are, it really doesn't do justice to what that person's a book by someone has done to me. But if I gave a little description and context,
Mm.
then it makes sense. So, in that sense, working with you has really helped me do those things that I wouldn't do or know to do on my own.
Yeah, I think that's something that's very like everybody has different things. Like I could talk to 10 different people and then they would mention 10 different specific ways in which the manuscript was changed from working with an editor. But I think the common denominator is you don't know what you don't know when it comes to books, and most of my clients are writing books for the first time. So yeah, it's just being this person that fills in fills in those gaps.
Yeah. Yeah. This person who's on my team who
Yes.
helps.
I'm so glad you said that, because there is a lot out there about the very adversarial kind of feel to an editor writer relationship, and it is a bit of a dance, but it's really important that the writer feels supported, especially if you're self-publishing, because number one, you've probably not shared this with too many other people, certainly not people that don't know you and are already very much, knowing who you are and knowing what you're about and liking you. So that's the first kind of challenge. And secondly, like when you come to put it out there, you do want to know that you've got a professional job done. And if you're self-publishing, the editor really might be the first person who's seen it outside of your circle, but also the last person who's really had a lot of involvement other than you. Because when we traditionally publish, several editors will look at it, copy editors, um, proofreaders, and that is the case within my team as well. We do have more than one set of eyes, but the traditional publishing route, there's a lot of scrutiny before it gets to the end result, and those are some of the books that we see. Whereas with self-publishing, your editor is probably your main your main support person when it comes to how the story is going to turn out.
Yeah, I agree.
So what would you do differently if you were to do it again?
Okay. One thing I might do differently is every time I'm like, having some sort of citation, right?
Mm.
A website, a book, or something, keep that documented. If I don't, it's a lot of work to redig through everything. So
Yeah.
that is a lesson learned, that it's a huge time saving thing, that as I go, keep the reference section going, even if it's not formatted APA or anything like that, just have the notes.
Yes.
Because
That's really,
after
yeah.
after I turned everything in, I had some notes, but it was not nearly enough. So I had to like redig everything. And then, I wanted my references easy for a reader to, be numbered, like by chapter and numbered. And so it took me time to like revisit all my sources, make sure it's all there. So it's time consuming. So that was one big lesson learned.
Yeah, it is. I've had that feedback from a lot of people, and I think I need to be talking more about, keeping track of your references as you go. There's another episode actually of Write Your Book Your Way with Susie Gronsky, and she did a second edition of her book just so that she could do that exercise more thoroughly. I mean, there were other updates to her book as well, but she is writing on physiotherapy, so it required a lot of references. She has about 200 references in there, as opposed to, I think, about 60 perhaps the first time. So yeah, and it took a couple of years to get all of that really thoroughly referenced again. So it is a process. I'm writing my own book at the moment and trying to keep track of everything that I want to reference along the way. It's definitely an exercise, but I'm hoping that I won't have to go and,
Yeah.
do that from scratch. And I've spoken to a number of people who they think they're done because they've gotten to the end of the edit, they've got a resources section that they've said, oh, I'll go back and fill this in later. So the bulk of everything has been done, and it's actually not the bulk, because they have to go through the entire manuscript one more time to even find where they got certain things from. So I do try to point out that something could do with a reference, but obviously only the writer really knows where they learned something. So
yeah,
and I think that's really
congratulations, Kris. You're writing your book.
I'm going to be on the other side. I'm going to be in your seat, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, I am. But I'm very inspired by all of the people I've worked with over the last 10 years. And it's time for me to walk my talk and and actually put my book out there. So yes. But this is about you.
Yeah.
So where are we at with the book? How far through the process are you? I know it's coming out soon, but you've also done an amazing audio version as well, as the book has been in production with the typesetter and the cover designer and the interior designer. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So I, just like the feeling I got with you, I got the same feeling when I spoke to this graphic designer, and she's the only one I spoke to. It's not like I spoke to multiple people, but she came to a reference.
You must be just
and
so
I loved her authenticity.
People.
I mean, seriously, her authenticity and the simplicity with which she works. It was really easy to connect, and she was able to interpret what I wanted very nicely in the cover. And so yeah, while this was going through the process of getting ready, I got the audiobook recorded at a studio in Dallas, and that process was really wonderful. And yeah, so I've gone through all the edits. The audiobook's been edited, and they're working on the edits. I'm supposed to be receiving the proof hard copy in, say, a week or two, and so we're really close.
So cool. And so you haven't had the physical book in your hands yet?
That's true.
But it's nearly there. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, this interview will go out after your book is launched, so I will put all of the details into the video to let people know where they can get hold of it. It's such a beautiful memoir, and so interesting that it pulls in so many different aspects of life. And I think almost any woman will resonate with some part of your journey. I know for me, the leaving and going overseas really resonated, because I live in Australia, I'm from the UK. So the vulnerability that you have as a temporary person in another country is one aspect of it. You've got stories of your childhood and some difficulties around family members and relationships. You've got joining a new family and being accepted into a new family, and then you've obviously got a lot of the health journey that you talked about, and the work journey and the parenting journey. So it's such an eclectic book when we talk about all of the things that happen in a life's journey, and you've done such a beautiful job of sewing them all together. So I'd really encourage anybody watching this to go and grab a copy of Rajni's book. It's so lovely.
Thank you so much, Kris. That means a lot.
Oh, of course. And thank you so much for joining me today. I'm sure everyone has gotten lots out of all the things that you've had to share with us, and the insights into the behind the scenes of writing a memoir, and the bits that can be a little bit sticky, and also the bits that flow beautifully. So thank you so much for your insights there.
Thank you, Kris. It's wonderful speaking to you.
You too. Thank you.